All right. Today, I am so excited to welcome my buddy Matthew Molnar. We've known each other for about 30 years, which is kind of insane, but we grew up with each other in hardcore. And one of the things I like about Matt is that he's a lot like me, and we all like people who are like ourselves, and that he has every job in the music business conceivable. He's been in bands since we were kids, produced records, managed bands, and he books at two of the coolest venues in Bushwick, Brooklyn. So I wanted to come on and get him to share tons of different wisdom about different things, since there's very few people who see the full picture like he does. So Matt, welcome to My Point Four Cents.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to be on here. Thanks for asking me to be on.
Yeah, I'm so psyched to have you. And why don't you tell the people a little about what you're doing now, and like give us a quick, let's say 5 minute, where you come from and and what you're doing now.
Okay, sure. Well, I'll start with what I'm doing now, and then I can throw in what I come from. So currently, I am a concert booker, talent buyer.
And I should say for everybody, these venues Matt books at are like two of the most sought after cool venues to play in all of New York.
Thank you, Jesse. That's very, very nice of you to say. Yeah. So what I do now is I'm a concert booker, talent buyer for Market Hotel in Bushwick. That's at the legendary Myrtle Broadway stop. That's pretty heavily memed at this point.
I was gonna say the most memed location in all of America at this point.
Yeah, rightfully so. It's pretty special. It's pretty crazy, and it's like one of the few places in New York now that, like, when you see movies from the 70s or 80s where they're supposed to be like crazy, crime-ridden, insane New York, just not even just that, just the absolutely bonkers New York. Like, that's what Myrtle Broadway still organically is and probably will always be.
One could hope.
Yeah, one could hope. So
It's
it's
it's it's also famous for being the venue where people get blown away when they see someone DJing or playing and there's a Subway in the background. And I don't mean Subway sandwich shop, I mean an actual Subway going by because the window is right next to the Subway.
Yes, all of our windows, like on the one side, on the south wall of the building, all face the JMZ train. So that's pretty epic. And they kind of stop on the platform behind the band. And when they're performing, or like a DJ if they're performing on stage, so you have the window and all the lights of the train and the station when there's people are getting off. It's like an extra light for the venue. It's pretty epic. But yeah, that's a big room. It's 500 capacity. It's mostly for national touring acts or, bands kind of leveling up in the area. It's just a bit smaller than Bowery Ballroom and Music Hall of Williamsburg. So it's, right now, but we're an independently owned venue. It used to be totally illegal in DIY. People lived there. Going there in like 2009 and 10 when it was like a life-changing experience. And I was, fairly grown at that point into my 20s. And it was like, oh my God, this is the coolest place I've ever been to for a show. This is the best venue I've ever been to. And I think even though it's not that DIY spot anymore, we're totally above ground, totally legal. I think it still carries that spirit. And then I also work for Trans-Pecos, which is smaller. It's more of like a kind of traditional nightclub size. Yeah, and that's on the Ridgewood Bushwick border. And that's, we got programming 5-7 days a week and, late nights and all sorts of stuff. So they're both pretty fun and exciting. And it's, Trans-Pecos especially because that's where I can really kind of be a part of the local music community and find the bands that I really like and think are special and, kind of help them have a platform to play in front of audiences they might not normally have access to, and other bookers or promoters might not be willing to take a chance on them yet in front of that.
It's one of the things I really appreciate about you is that you also are one of the few people I know who lives in modern small bands. Like every time you send me something, I'm like, yeah, this ain't on my radar. And there's so few people I know at any age are good with that.
Yeah, I for sure. And you know what? I had points in my life where I wasn't, but then at some point you just kind of, for me, I just felt like it's more exciting and more inspiring to be around modern music and like, all old music is the best, quote unquote, because it's like, it's had 10 or 20 years to rise to the top and is like as good as Elliott Smith was when I was a kid. I was in fucking high school and, he's putting out new records and I was like, oh wow, this is cool music, it was like you can see it even more when like 10 years have passed and those records are still just as good, if not better than when they were came out. And I think those records are better than when they came out, you know?
So, some of my favorite stuff.
Yeah, and there's so many artists that are, like, totally forgotten about. There's more way, 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 way more artists from any era that are more forgotten about. So if we're all talking about a band 10 years later, 20 years later, let alone 30 years later, clearly that artist was onto something at the time, or they were so ahead of their time that they're just so high quality that they just have the same impact or greater impact decades later. So it's like, yeah, and anything people listen to when they're young, like, of course, that's gonna be amazing. Like, the worst pop punk band's amazing because you liked them at 12. The worst hardcore band's amazing because you liked them at 14, you know? So, for me, it's very important to especially now where less money is in the music biz than ever, less support for anything professionally, less outlets, less media. I think it's more important than ever to really if you care about this stuff, on a professional level or a personal level to understand what's happening and support it, be a part of it, and that's really important. I mean, I think different points, I was so inspired, like 2007, I think, was an amazing turning point for the New York City music scene because that's when all of the sort of hoopla over the sort of Interpol Strokes, Yeah, Yeah, Yeahs era died down.
The indie sleaze era.
Mhm, mhm, yeah, and that's the era I moved here on, and that era, it's like kids today don't understand, but, like, when I moved here, then to do a band and we wanted to be a full-time band and we all moved here from Jersey, it was like there was no like, "Oh, maybe Matador will sign us. Maybe Rough Trade will sign us." Like, you knew they signed, like, 1 band a year, and a lot of indies weren't in that game yet where they would have taken cool rock bands, you know? Like, that's all way later. That's, like, after Franz Ferdinand is, like, Domino's the thing and all that. So and there was so many major labels coming to shows, so it really was like major label or bust, Like it wasn't insane that you would get signed to a major, like that's who was around. And it was just a weird time. And when that all kind of cleared up, you kind of had a really great independent scene. It was like all of a sudden people realized that you could live in Bushwick, Bed-Stuy or Ridgewood and not come from a trust fund, not have a huge support system, but you could live in New York and do a band and it wasn't insane. And that
Yeah.
was kind of when all the 2007s really when all the DIY venues started popping off more. And my boss, Todd P, who's behind Market and Pecos, like, he was really operating or cooperating a bunch of spaces or at least doing some really strong shows. So
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very funny thing is, like, if you listen to any band talking about that era that it became a big deal, whether it's like a Dirty Projectors
mhm.
on, like, to whoever, you're gonna hear them mentioning doing Todd P shows, and right now, you're booking those bands that in 10 years, everybody will be saying like, "Oh, well, they were playing at Trans-Pecos and Market Hotel."
Hopefully, and if not, at least
I'd bet a toe on it personally, maybe even 2.
yeah, well, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's something I definitely aim for in terms of just trying to help nurture a scene in a community. And I think around 2007, that's when I think got really exciting and really special. And I remember being like, yo, even if these aren't like my all time favorite fucking bands, like no one's gonna replace Hank Williams and no one's gonna replace fucking, I don't know who my other all time favorites are at that era, but like these bands were releasing demos and releasing 7 inches and playing like The Orphanage and playing Dead Herring and playing Silent Bar and playing Death by Audio. Like the worst band that I would see regularly was better than it was better than the best bands that I saw in New York as like a teenager, like young person in the like Strokes Interpol era.
But one of the things I wanted to get
Yes.
your brain on is exactly that, is that one of the things that we talk about a lot on the group chat of My Point Four Cents is like the idea of like so many people we deal with in music that we don't really vibe with are the type of people who've never really been in the trenches of a
Yeah.
tour van trying to make a band go, and then also been on this side of it where you're doing it, whereas you were in the shitty, and I don't mean musically shitty, but like the lowest level of getting compensated for your music type of punk bands like that, like, Dead Nation, your old band is like a crusty punk band where you're like, if you got $100 for a show, it's a fucking miracle. Then on to like the buzziest of pitchfork bands, and now you manage bands that are very buzzy. When you're trying to get from 0
Mhm.
to 20 fans being able to come out to your show and you wanna be that opener at Trans-Pecos, how do they get on your radar?
Yeah, I mean, I think bands get on my radar by a couple ways. I mean, I think it's always a mix. I think for one, when I have time, I mean, I go out to a lot of shows. So if anyone's good live and I get to see it, I'm like, I fuck with this. I think bands that are part of the community is really key. And here, I like to call this now the extended shoegaze universe because there's a modern shoegaze thing, and it's not necessarily specifically an exact sound. I think it's the way you use, like, grunge, which was an actual genre from, like, 1986 to, 1991 or so. There was an actual genre with an actual sound or subgenre or microgenre, whatever the fuck you wanna call it. And then you just kinda call sort of things grunge because it's represents something like that, and I think shoegaze, I have my personal parameters of what I'll call shoegaze, and to put that on the record, it's like, if you're doing something that's just entirely derivative of an early '90s band, like you're entirely derivative of MBV or entirely derivative of Slowdive or something, or Ride, I don't consider that shoegaze. I think at this point, that's
Mm.
classic rock.
Damn, bars.
Yeah, and I think to me what shoegaze is now is look, it's been friggin' 15, 20 years of, like, massive technological development in effects pedals. For a $300 pedal, you're getting stuff that it would take in, like, $2,000, $4,000 in, like, 1991 money of, like, rack units and like, some, like, $1,000 an hour studio, and you have these ways to manipulate and mess with sound at your fingertips and at your foot, and I think what really started making this era really unique and special was is artists coming to older rock music again, like older forms, and actually adding something new to it. And I think that's what separates, like, the more exciting, indie rock related subgenres to me, because no one wants to just hear an exact recreation of something that happened before. It's like, if you're so spot on, you'll get those bands fans, like, what's that one that's silly, that, like, Led Zeppelin clone band of, like, young kids, they're kinda cute?
Oh, Greta Van Fleet.
Yes. Right? Like, you can get a bunch of Zeppelin fans because Zeppelin has 100 million fans at any given time across the universe, So, you can kinda get 1 million fans out of theirs by just being derivative of them or feeling derivative of the '70s enough that people who wanna be nostalgic or young kids who liked old music and don't have any new bands to rally behind, but I think anyone who's into something that's a little left of center and a little more underground, you want something that feels underground, and I think a band like They're Gutting a Body of Water, Feeble Little Horse, to me, that's what shoegaze is
Yeah.
right now.
You got me into Feeble Little Horse,
Oh,
actually, that's right.
awesome. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And if guys like us who like it, who've passed the age of 40, who've been in the music world since we were young teenagers, if we can find something exciting and meaningful about that band, they've gotta be twice as good as your average band because we've seen a lot, we've done a lot, and we're not the target demographic. So they're doing something on a musical or personal level that can excite people like us.
So you're really looking for artists who feel like they might have some exciting spark early on, is what you're
Yeah,
looking for.
absolutely. I think if bands really are contributing to and they feel like they're part of the scene, if you will, even if
Mhm.
they're not as far along yet as other people, like those are bands that I also want to champion and rally behind and find a place for because to me it's about building community and like every band like okay, like in 2012, right? By that point in my life, I toured professionally for a living, been in a band that had a bidding war, got signed, like had a ton of majors after us. So I had a lot of experience. And I'm telling you, every band I saw after touring the world for like a year straight, every new band I saw of young kids, and when I would see one of their first shows, they would be like, man, this got to be one of the worst bands I've seen. Fast forward literally 2 months, 3 shows later, and I'd be like, oh, this is my new favorite band. I can't tell you how many times, I can't even count between my two hands how many times I've seen that, where I'd be like, this is the worst band I've seen because it's one of their first shows. They're very young as people, young as a band. And then literally just in a matter of 2 months, just is already onto something. It was just they just needed to kind of work it out in public a little bit, or they just needed to like get their feet wet and then they became really good to awesome. And so I can't write really anybody off. So if there's bands that really feel like they're part of the scene as people and as a sound, even if it's not the best, it's like, well, I wanna, like, get behind that because it's like, this is kind of about this is more to me about building a community than building a world of sonic clones, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny, one of the places you and I used to go is a place I worked called The Pipeline
Oh,
where I both
yeah.
booked and, did sound, and, my boss, Anthony Trance, who was a phenomenal promoter who passed away, unfortunately, I remember Anthony would tell me I would have to book this band, the Rodneys, because they hung around the club and they were a part of the scene and that they were very ambitious. And I'd be like, but they suck. He's like, you're right. They suck, but they're that. Now, for the listener who does not know this about the Rodneys became My Chemical Romance.
Oh, exactly.
So there you go. Reinforcing your point there.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and that's exactly it, you know?
To be flat out though, somebody who hangs out at a lot of the shows that you see regularly, you're much more likely to book.
Oh, 1,000,000%. Because that person's part of what we're all doing, you know? There's bands that are really good, and people fuck with them, and, you know, like, you just never see them out at shows or never going to shows. They're like, "Oh, I work all the time," and it's like, well, you know, I think it's a give and take, you know? And unless you're in, like, one of the biggest national acts and in any given subgenre, I mean, you need to be out there participating in this because this is until you just reach so many people, the only thing you're gonna have going for you is the people you're friends with, the bands you're friends with, and the community you're a part of, and if you can't give to that, if you can't pay into that, it's like Social Security. If you're not paying into it, you're not gonna get it. I think bands might see other examples and think, "Oh, that band doesn't do it." It's like, well, at one point they did, you know? And it's like,
Nah.
I mean, I don't even live in Philly, but, like, I wouldn't need the members of there gutting a body of water. I'd have to see them at all the shows. It's like, you know, it's like those guys have been doing bands for ages, you know? The drummer was in grindcore bands that would play the Meat Locker in high school, and, you know, it's just like, they all came from things, and once a band's touring, you know, fairly nonstop, it's like it's just gonna be by nature that they can't go to things the way they did because they're not around, you know? And then if they are, when you're touring full time, you're touring 8 months out of the year. Sometimes the last thing you want to do is go see new bands, you know, or see bands in general.
I am always shocked when you see the boy who just got back from tour, they're out at the show or something, you're like, "Damn, dude, you really live in this shit, huh?"
Well, I mean, in,
Yeah.
in when my old band friends, I mean, we would do that with 285 Kent. I mean, it was
Oh, yeah.
there were some nights where you'd literally be home for tour for like a day in New York. You'd have like a day off or two in New York and then be right back out. And like I would literally spend the only night I had in New York just at 285.
And we should draw the connection that 285 was a Todd P. venue,
Yes.
which you now work for.
Yes, exactly. 285 Kent was absolutely legendary. Just Google it.
Yeah. I helped put together the PA there when it first got put in.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, then there was a few
Yeah.
PAs there, and I think we have one of them still. We have a few of the PAs, like, in storage. Yeah, and I think too, I think other things I look for is I think people who are, you know, doing something a little bit different because ultimately I think if you're doing something that's not just good, but a little bit different than what everyone else is doing, you know, because it's good, you're gonna be able to fit with more artists, and because it's different, it's gonna feel more special on our programming, you know, when we have a cool event, so, you know, that to me is really, you know, gets bands on my radar. It's just like, "Oh, this is a bit different," and, like, you know, right before I started booking full time, you know, bands like Lip Critic and Yahweh Nailgun were, like, on the come up, and those are
Oh,
bands
man,
that
I love that, Yahweh Dilgun record.
absolutely, and, like, those are bands that if you saw them live, you'd be like, "Oh, this is very different and exciting," and it's like, you know, maybe you know, on record, they're not even as impactful as they are live, but it was just both of those artists are artists that are, like, doing something very different or, like I mean, they're a friend of mine, but Anastasia Coop,
Mhm.
you know, and she got signed to Jaguar, like, right off the bat pretty much, and, you know, she's just doing something musically, sonically, in every sense that, like, is just so off the beaten path of what people are doing right now, and, you know, I mean, I don't there doesn't need to be, like, 20 clones of her or something, but something something that doesn't make sense, but yet kinda makes sense, you know, like, that's
Mhm.
pretty exciting, you know, like I don't know, maybe it doesn't make sense with everyone else, but it makes sense to itself and, you know,
Mhm.
that's yeah.
So let's say you get booked by you.
Yes.
One of the things I noticed from doing consulting is, like, I get calls from bands like, "We have to talk right now."
Mhm.
What do I do now that I've been booked at a show? What is the expectation if you are booked and you're opening for a band? I think if I was at, Trans-Pecos, you invited me down a few weekends ago, a band came in from Canada that were really cool, you had some local openers.
Mhm.
If you're one of the local openers, what's the expectation of what you should be doing here?
Yeah, I think the expectation should be you should be getting the flyer out there, you should be getting word out there to, the audience you do have. I mean, I think you've gotta promote on social media. Everyone kinda hates on social media, and, it's just beyond the fact that it's, like, the best and biggest platform that you have, like, I don't get paid by Instagram or any social media or Meta to ever say, "Oh, this stuff's great," or works. It's like, I mean, it just does. Until it doesn't, it does. And, I saw, like, the most boomerish, freaking, like, meme the other day, like, it was a thing of Kurt Cobain, it's like, "Who's gonna tell this guy to make like, imagine trying to tell Kurt Cobain
Oh,
to
yeah,
make
no,
content.
I
It's like, yeah,
I know,
it's called fucking music videos. It was called
yeah.
appearing on Headbangers Ball and, like, wearing a dress. It was called every time he had to appear on MTV, every time he had to do an interview. Like, that's what making content was, and he had to do it 24/7, you know?
Radiohead made a whole movie about how much they hated doing the same interview over and over and over, traveling to it and going to it all day long, having to do radio all day before every show, and before that, it was fucking mailing list labels. My father, when he managed this, band when it was like that was, the big thing. Mailing list labels, putting
Yep.
them on things analog before
Mhm.
computer printers, like, fucking horrible.
Oh, absolutely, and you had fan clubs, you had to answer fan mail, and it's like, when my band Friends started doing really well was it was, like, kinda peak Facebook era. And
Oh,
then people would figure out, like, your name and find your profile, and my friends in other bands who kinda hit up, you know, the national level or international level before we did, they would tell me, like, "Oh, you're gonna," like, people will, like, DM you and be like, "Is this really you?" And that started happening, and then I realized, I'm like, it's easier to have a conversation while I'm bored in my hotel or I'm hungover in the morning and I'm trying to have any excuse to not leave my hotel on time, like, or I have, like, cell phone service and I'm on my BlackBerry at the time,
Oh,
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I held on to the BlackBerry for a long time.
yeah, I loved it. I didn't wanna switch 'cause, I did so many emails off of it, and
Yeah.
I loved the typewriter board. But anyway, to me, it was just like, wow, this is so much easier than if I had to, like, sit in an office for 6 hours and answer a bunch of fan mail and write it by hand. Here, it's like I can do this, like, in a van, and some of these people are gonna be my actual peers. Some are just people that
Mhm.
really wanna be a fan and feel like a fan to themselves, and other people are gonna be people that, like, they might actually be your peers. They're just, coming at you through Facebook because they want a way to, like, introduce themselves, but in general, I'm like, "Man, this is just like digital fan mail. This is easier."
Mhm.
But yeah, to speak to, like that, it's like everyone's always like, "Oh, did this person have to do that?" I'm like, "Yeah, you're exactly right." Like Radiohead, you'd have to, like, sit there and do tons and tons of radio. Now there's more artists than there are radio stations, or there are more people listening to radio, so it's like, yeah, there always is something new, and it's like, uh, you know, I think finding ways to, yeah, get the word out. And I think if you're a small band and you feel like, "Okay, well, we only have 650 followers, and we only get, like, 30 likes when we post something." 1, figure out new ways to post and make it a little more engaging, exciting. Don't just put up the flyer and say, "We're playing on Tuesday." Like, no one wants to see that, no one cares,
Yep.
but find a way to make them care, you know?
I just made a big, long video for my members feed about how
Yep.
to make announcements exciting.
And that's super important. And then, okay, like, I've been in bands where we had low engagement, and then you're like, "Okay, well, what do I do?" Well, I would have people all the time hit me up, especially after the band Friends. They'd be like, "Oh, I know Friends isn't doing stuff anymore, but I really wanna hear any music you do." And I'd be like, "I'm posting about it all the time on Facebook," but they wouldn't see it. So, I realized later on, I'm like, "Alright, well, anyone who I think's interested, any of my local friends," like, I would just start texting people the flyer and give them a little personalized
Mhm.
message just saying, "Hey, we're playing Tuesday. I don't know if I have guest list spots, but come out," or whatever, or, like, hey, come out to this. And if you know your friends are broke, be like, hey, I'll buy you a beer or something, depending on how much you want that person there, or how much it means to you to bring a lot of people to a show. And if your band's half good, people will want to support it. There will be no confusion about that. People will want to like give you support or to like rally behind you, even if just for a few weeks or a few months. And then people see you get bigger, even if they don't really love what you're doing, but because you're their friend, they'll rally behind you twice as much. It's not that they're fair weather, but it's just like it's a way to be proud of somebody. It's like, when you hate sports and your friends are on the friggin' football team and their star football team, you'll go to some football games,
Yeah,
It's
yeah, that's real.
so it's kinda like that, and music shows can be fun social activities, so, I think promoting is key. I think knowing, like, yeah, like, if you have friends that might go, if you were, texting them the flyer and giving them a personalized note saying, "Hey, I think you might really like this band." For example, that I Dialed Your Number show, say it wasn't the opener that we had, who I absolutely love, Zach Schatz, check them out. They're wonderful. I think a lot of different people can like them. If it wasn't Zach Schatz and it was somebody else, right? There's, the headliner from Canada. You can literally, if you really think like, wow, this band's really unique and special, you show your friend that band and you text them the Spotify or Bandcamp or YouTube link to a video or a song, and you're like, oh my God, we're playing with this band. Or like, for example, I think one of their songs kind of blew up a little bit on YouTube, I Dialed Your Number. So you send your friends this video and be like, "Oh, look how well this band's doing. We get to open for them." Like, sometimes
Yep.
that's really important. I mean, I remember the first time living in New York where I got to open a big show. Like, the venue's now Music Hall of Williamsburg, but it used to be called North 6. It was, like, a really cool, it was, big room. It was just pretty much the same size, and stage was a bit smaller in terms of, it was, like,
Mhm.
less out, but it was very wide, and
Was
it wasn't fancy.
less well designed is what I'd like to say,
Yes,
yeah.
very much less well designed, but I mean, they had all sorts of national headliners play through
Mhm.
there? So getting to open, be like first of 3 at North 6 was huge? It was like some of the first times we were in blogs. Elliot's blog posted us. He wouldn't, despite
Says
being
a mutual friend of ours who had a blog called Record Label with No Vowels, that was a massive tastemaker, during the blog era.
yes. So he had other ones before that, and, yeah, he was an earlier bandmate of mine and a roommate of mine, nothing I did was good enough to cross his radar and, garner his attention. But we played North 6 and there was great photos of me and my favorite Telecaster, just yeah, and we opened for a band on a major label from the UK. It was like so exciting. And I think bands should, when you get an opportunity to play for someone that's like, several steps ahead of you, it's like sometimes it is an honor, sometimes it is like a privilege, and sometimes it is a big step up. And I think bands kind of have to, like, you don't have to make the hugest deal about it and be like, oh my God, we got to do everything right. I don't want to mess this up, but at the same time, it's use that to your advantage to get your friends' interest. Cause like, if you can get a promoter, if you can get me or anyone in this realm, and there's people that are so much more sought after than myself, like Baby's Alright, if you can get someone like that to take you seriously enough to support that kind of an artist, then, it's gonna be half the battle to get your friends to take you that seriously. So, when those kind of wins come in, sometimes you gotta spell it out for people. Like, "Hey, this band's got, like, millions of plays on songs," or, "They have these awesome videos that are going viral," or, "This band is just, like, so good." It's crazy, like, how good they are. Like, you gotta check them out. And I think you gotta use some of that stuff to your advantage, and when you don't have it, you'll be wanting it. So when you do get it, like, make the most of it? And I think ultimately, I think you have to learn some sort of art of self-promotion. If you don't think all your heroes did it, you are smoking effing crack.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just like, I think what's the key about marketing is that, like, all historical marketing is invisible now because it's all gone. So much of
Mhm.
it was brick and mortar and, like, in
Oh,
record
yeah.
stores, and, like, I mean, I'll tell you this, like, right, I was, like, a target demographic to, like, be, like, first in for The Strokes.
Mhm.
And not only was I like, "Oh my God, these guys are kinda, cheesy," it was like, when you went into that record store, you went to Vintage Vinyl in New Jersey, huge record store, sadly closed in the last year, but it was enormous.
One of the biggest record stores I've ever seen, like amoeba-sized.
Yes. It was like Mariah Carey coming out. record coming out
Mhm.
in terms of the amount of, posters and just displays and everything around that record store. It was like, Nevermind didn't even have this. I mean, I was a little kid, but, like, I
Mm.
totally had my lived in record stores as a 9, 10, 11-year-old, so, like, it was very I don't think Nevermind had that much push at record stores unless they were small ones, and, like, it was after videos were out, and it was already selling, like, 2 or 3,000,000 copies, which was already a crazy amount. But, yeah, so when Is This It dropped, it was just, like, everywhere, and, it was almost too much?
Was a very, very overly promoted record that you could see posters of everywhere you looked for sure,
Yes.
and it's funny, I, like,
And it sounded like it
just
was recorded in a basement, so it was like
it was in fact recorded in a
and it
basement
sounds
under,
like it.
in what is now the Club Berlin, right?
Oh, is that where his studio was?
Somebody told me that recently, I don't know if
I
it's,
know it was
true,
over
but
around there somewhere, but, yeah, I
yeah.
mean, even if it wasn't, it was still in that
Yeah,
hood and
somewhere right over there, by
mhm.
the Club Berlin.
Yeah.
One of the things I think that also makes you special
Mhm.
is you've produced many up and coming artists, like, and produced the stuff that arguably got them their buzzy break, let's call it.
Okay.
You also manage artists. When you're coaching an artist through developing their sound, tell me what it's looked like that, like, what's too far for you to go? What's too soft? Like, what type of love do you think artists need to find their way a lot of the time when you're working with them?
Well, I think look, I mean, for me, a lot of it's about making a record, and if you're making a first record, in this era, a lot of artists don't have any real studio experience because people now are bypassing studios and just home recording and all that, so a lot of it is just like, okay, you sound really cool live, but now the whole point of a record is that it's gonna live forever, so you've gotta make it so that it's something that you can keep listening to, so you kinda have to help them iron out every natural mistake that every band kinda has on their come up? Sometimes it's tempos, sometimes it's, just arrangement stuff and, songs being too busy. A lot of times bands I think artists are really blind to their own hooks. They're either agoraphobic about hooks or something. They're like hookophobic because they're like, "Oh, this seems cheesy." And it's like, "My brother, this is the best thing you've ever done probably in your whole entire life."
I can't believe you hit me with hookophobic when I was taking a sip of water,
Oh, I'm
dog.
sorry,
That was
I'm
fucked up.
sorry.
That was fucked up what you did to me.
No, but you've seen it, man.
No, oh, hookophobic is, like, an amazing term, like, you
Yeah.
should get yourself some credit on Urban Dictionary for that one.
Thank you. Yeah, no, anyone who's made a record with people as a producer, even an engineer, like, you'll just see bands shy away from the stuff that's like, this is going to win you the respect of the audience that you're after. You think they're gonna be like, "Oh, this is cheesy," or they're not gonna get it. It's like, that's the first thing they're gonna get. Like, that's what they're coming for. They've been listening to you not just because of the music you made is that good. They're listening to you because they know that you're gonna get to that song that they haven't heard, and that's what they're waiting for and you have it and you don't wanna give it to them.
Yeah, it's a real thing that it's both, like, you're self-conscious and sometimes you're just, like, a little too wrapped up in the scene of things, and I like, one of the funniest things I have consistently with one of the bigger groups I work with is they'll send me their material, and I'll be like, "That's the one,"
Give me
and they're like and everyone who hears the record is always like, "That song's the one," they're, like, agreeing with me,
Yep, yep, yep.
and they're like, "That was the one we were gonna cut."
Always,
It's
always,
like,
yeah.
you're like and I that's happened a million times, and it's
Yeah.
this hookophobia because, like, you're a little too in the thing and not just thinking about, like, "Oh, that's a fucking sick hook."
You're too into it to know what, like, you do best or what your singles are or what the material is that's, like, special or strong, I think. So, like, for example, I think a lot of bands, when they wanna pick a single, like their first single, it's just some blatantly obvious album track to anyone else who will hear it, and it's not that it's a bad song, it's just there's so much personal connection, it shows personal growth for them, and it just might not be what the journey that like your fans are on because your fans aren't just your fans. It's like even if you're going to be able to sell 10,000 copies in a year, which is great for the modern era, right? That's pretty freaking big. Your audience still listens to like if not dozens and dozens, possibly hundreds of other artists, even if it's just a few songs. And you want them to be able to connect to you and you want to stay in that loop with them and then you also want to be in that loop for all these people who you're not in that loop. And if they listen to hundreds of artists, but only 2 or 3 songs, you need to have those 2 or 3 songs that get them, or else you won't have that audience. It's like, if Grimes didn't have Oblivion and Genesis, man, like, no one would know who she wasn't
That's
gonna
true.
launch that career with California and, like, what's that one? Something with no
I
sense.
mean, let's be honest. My girl, while I love some of her tracks, has some quite forgettable tracks.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Visions is classic, but even Visions has some forgettable tracks, and actually,
A
just as
hundred
a
percent.
insider baseball, it's if you get the original Canadian version of the record that was already in production before she got signed to 4AD, there's less of those songs because it's a shorter record, and then all the new stuff that she recorded after getting signed to 4AD to, like, make it a longer record and to give more new material, a lot of those songs aren't so good, of, like, the 3 or 4 of them, and
You're telling me that a label mandated more songs be put on a re-release and they weren't good songs? This doesn't sound like a likely story, Matt.
no, no, not at all. Well, it wasn't like a re-release, it was already, like, the 481 on Canada was already coming. I mean, the
Ah,
Arvidas one in Canada was already, like, I imagine, already in production. Because in
I
my
see.
mind, like, that came out, like, the summer of 2011, like, or, like, the fall of 2011, the Canadian version, but I guess because it was, like, she'd been on my radar,
Mhm.
as a tiny artist just 'cause she's
She was making the rounds of Brooklyn, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, and, we were
I
doing similar stuff as her, and
I was doing a lot of dating at the time, and I joked I had a ban on, girls putting that on when I came over to their houses because they would play it was such a common thing.
yeah, I mean, whoever I was dating or casually seeing at that time when Visions came out, but, like, mutually, that was a record, like, I can't tell you how much romantic life I lived to that record for, like, the first year it was out. I mean, but I loved it. I mean, that was one I was insane about that record, and if you find old interviews with me from my band after Vision came out, I would put that in. They'd be like, "What's your top 3 or 5 records of right now? Who are the best artists? What do you think's great?" I would say Visions, Visions, Visions all day from the week that record dropped to till that summer, there wasn't a new record anymore.
So to get off of our, dating lives many moons ago,
Yeah, no one wants to hear about.
what one of the things that I paid you a couple of is, I went to see a band you manage called High that you also, have done a ton of production work, and I was, like, astounded how well they play together.
Yes.
One of the things I think you're good at focusing on is you often are very honed in on the things that musicians are gonna do that are gonna get them respect amongst their peers and create buzz. Can you talk a little about, like, how you see that world?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I see it in bands, it's already there. It's just it's like sculpting. It's just sometimes you have to help them to see what they need to cut away so the best ideas are fully in focus. You can never make anything perfect, but I think it's really key that it's like a camera. It's literally just getting it into focus, and you really need to sometimes there's just too many elements that are competing with each other, or sometimes it's a bit of a lyric or an extra an extra melody or an extra little piece that doesn't need to be there. And sometimes it's just getting them to cut away stuff to the exact essence of, like, okay, this is what really hits. And then that's all the song will really need. And then sometimes it's like, hey, okay, now the song's taking us from this place to this place to this place. It needs one last place to go, right? Or it needs somewhere to go in the middle. And, like, when High brought Dead, that was their first song that we actually ended up releasing of all the stuff they started demoing with me and recording, and then going to other studios and recording with me producing, and, like, we already had songs that we were focused on, like, oh, this is gonna be the next EP, this is gonna be the EP, this is gonna be the next single, like, the stuff that was already in the works, already being recorded. Some songs were, like, just needed, like, 1 or 2 touch-ups on vocals and a final mix, and we were ready to go. But then Dead came through, it wasn't even honed in yet, and there was so much material from them coming at me, like, they would just, like, have, like, a verse chorus of a song, be like, "Wait, maybe we should record this, maybe we should record that," and when I first heard Dead, it was just I'm hearing it around so many songs that to me were distracting from the songs that I wanted to focus on. I was like, "No, no, I think we picked our songs, like, let's stay focused." And then they were like, "Okay, let's we're doing this one," and so then it was like, "Okay, well, I liked it best when I heard the singer do it acoustic. So, like, now this feels like it's great as a rock song when it kicks in, but, like, how do we do that?" So then it was kinda helping them just arrange it and be like, "Hey, instead of, like, look, if we have a bass intro versus something else, that's kinda gonna have a little bit of the ambiance available in the sonic spectrum where the vocals and the feeling of it's gonna hit the way it sounded when I heard the voice memo or whatever of the singer playing an acoustic guitar. He might have sent me a video, sometimes he would send me videos, and I was like, and then they switched the intro and they kind of changed that arrangement, and then the more we worked on the song, I mean, there was no new riffs at it. I wasn't like, change this riff or change, like write a whole new verse or something. But it was just taking what they had. I think there might have been something that like I cut away in like lyrics that happened in the chorus at one spot that like just made the melody a bit more like it kind of got in the way of the melody and stuff like that. But then really it was just kind of like, okay, at the very end, it was just sort of like, hey, the song's really dramatic and like cinematic, and just trying to help them find little ways to massage that out and like have it kind of build up and then build up further. And we all kind of worked on that together and like tried to make it something like that. And then it was also going to be released as like a sacrificial lamb song. Just like, oh, okay, guys, this is your first song. It's only going to do so well. And I wasn't managing them quite yet, but I was kind of giving them a lot of advice and helping them with promotion and stuff, and they're all used to being in these Jersey bands that were just, played the Meat Locker and played some DIY spots in New Brunswick and played
Yeah,
space.
for people who don't know what the Meat Locker is, it's like we considered one of the nastiest venues that's existed for 30 years. I actually grew up a whole 5 blocks from it.
Yes. And I'm gonna come back to that with High after this. So
Mhm.
please remind me to
Yeah,
circle
close
back
the
to
loop.
Meat Locker and High because I do have something very important I need to say.
Great.
But yeah, so it was like the drummers were someone said like, "Oh, I've never been in a band where we got like over 1,000 plays ever for a song." And that's just for a lot of bands. You
Oh,
make
yeah.
6, 8 songs, you put it out.
I remind people all the time, the second you hit 17,500 monthly listeners, according to the last Spotify report, you're in the top 1% of all artists.
Wow. So that's huge, and
It's crazy.
yeah. And they got a few thousand plays on that song like within a few weeks, and
Mm.
I remember having, like, a little celebration just, like, after, like, 3 or 4,000 plays or 5,000 plays or something because it's just no one they were so new, and it was just nothing they expected, and it was really I think it was just really exciting for everyone, like but yeah, so, I think all the little things, like, the little bit of attention to detail that we all paid, and I think having me there made them understand that they needed to pay attention to that detail, and if they're gonna be putting me in the mix and paying for me, like, they're gonna take it more seriously and, like, understand that, like, I want what's best for them, best for the song, and best for the vision that they have, and, like, also this is gonna be on an EP with a bunch of songs, so, like, let's not all have them be the same, like, let's have different kinds of intros. Maybe there's a bass intro, a guitar intro, a drum intro, or whatever vocal intro, whatever, it's just and I got that from punk rock, man. When I got, like,
Yeah.
Descendants, Milo Goes to College. It's just like each song has a different intro.
Oh, yeah, that's a great point.
It's just like there's a bass.
And that's like just classic songwriting there.
Yes, and I think that's all really important. And I remember getting like hardcore records in the straight edge realm when I was in high school, and there was just these like monotony to it where like every song started the same, like every lyric had the word "I" as the first word, and you know, um, and those are things that are like, okay, well, if this is gonna be generic or if this is gonna be like if this is gonna keep something back from being the best version of itself, like find all these things, and it's like, got another record, right? Like Be Here Now by Oasis. When I got that
Oh,
record,
I watched the documentary again this weekend,
oh
and it
wow.
just, like, blew me away.
Which documentary?
The Oasis, one,
Okay,
the
but
f it's on every it leads up to them playing the biggest show in England's history,
okay.
and it basically leads up to their peak, and you forget that those guys were so insane that when you're the biggest band in the world, members will still quit because 'cause they're like, "No, you're too fucking fucked up for me."
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And like, but like Be Here Now, I just remember being like, oh my God, like I'm in friggin' high school, like I'm a kid, I'm years and years from the drinking age. And like, I can tell you so much you're doing wrong on this record. You know, like every,
The lyrics are unbelievable, like,
they're
they're
just,
so bad.
they're just trash. They don't mean anything. And they don't mean anything in like an interesting way. And
What's crazy is when you watch the documentary, you hear that the lyrics got better between the demos and that record, and you're like, "Wow, I didn't know lyrics could be worse than that."
yeah, but like every song has like this guitar intro and it's just the guitar, like, riff 4 or 6 times, and it's just like, yo, that might have worked on Noel's home demo on, like, a 4-track or something, or on, whatever 1997 digital recording device he might have had, but, on an album that's meant to go, 10 times over platinum per country, it's kinda trash, like, it just,
I was talking to Steve Evans about this weekend, though, that people forget that, like, a lot of people make the distinction that Frank Ocean is the most influential artist of recent years,
Absolutely.
but is 100% more vibes than songs, and Oasis was the original more of a vibe than a song band.
Hmm, that's kinda interesting. That makes kinda
That
sense.
that's my theory, and this is the type of stuff you and I talk about when we hang out.
Oh, wow, yeah, we absolutely do. You could be I mean, yeah, but Be Here Now was such a record, like, I learned a lot from that record by how kinda, like, less than stellar it was, and I literally was, like, asked the studio that Dead Nation was recording at because he had digital technology, like, the first time I've been to a studio with, like, a DAW and all that, and I was like, "Hey, I don't know if this is illegal, but, like, if I have some extra money, can I bring this Oasis album here? I have all these edits I wanna do." 'Cause he said, like, "Oh, you're doing, like, these clean edits, like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
part of the song, and you would never know, and we didn't do it to a click or anything, because we're like a thrash band." So, I
Yep.
was literally, like, making all the notes of everything I would take off of, like, all the key songs in that record, because I wanted to have my own edited version of Be Here Now, because I was like, "I think if these songs were, like, 3.5 minutes, the record would be, like, just 20% better." Because you have all these non-epic songs at epic length, and I think that's the delusion was that, like, oh, like Led Zeppelin and later Stone Roses when they were actually
Oh, yeah.
getting kinda bad, but even the good Stone Roses, like, they have, like, their epic, like, 10-minute-long jam songs, but it's like, those are songs with, like, freak beat, breakbeat, like, Molly,
No,
freaks.
I always I think it was the Big Takeover review of one of their records called them "The Sprawling Roses."
Yeah, oh, absolutely, and, but yeah, so, something like even Be Here Now just taught me a lot because it's like, I could hear it as a young person, a band just getting like, their essence being bottled like, still in there, but just totally impacted by all of this trash of just filler in each song, and that if you just edited those songs down, you might have had a more noble sophomore slump, type of success,
Mhm.
and stuff like that, so I think for me, it's always like, as a producer, I'm not gonna be someone who's like, "Oh, like, this is their exact sound." Like, "Oh, if you work with this guy, it's gonna sound exactly like this," because I never want that. I'm coming from my producing from a place of songwriting, from being a band member, from being a musician, right? So, I don't come from, like, an engineer background. I learned to engineer as I did music over the years and as I was in the studio more and more. So, it to me, it's very much about I don't have an imprint I wanna put on the sonics of a record that's my taste. I just have a taste for what I think someone's good at, and when there seems to be something that I can just sense or I know this band is getting recognized for, like, I wanna kinda guard that a bit. I wanna be a little bit precious about it, also so they don't have to be precious about it. And sometimes to me, it's like being like a sin eater. It's like you want to absorb a bunch of the, like, background static of just all this stuff. Like, you wanna, like, absorb it all so they don't have to think about it. And, and they have more space just to do what they do. And, you can't always succeed at
Well,
it, but thank you. Yeah, and, and it's like you can I always, first things first, and I love this because Matt Bacon talks about this, but, like, every band I work with, one of the first things I always wanted people to do in producing records is, like, take some lessons for, like, almost every member. And sometimes, I mean, for everyone, it's like if you're a male and you're gonna sing and, like, you really it's like actual vocal singing, like, not shouting or whatever, and even that
or mumbling in shoegaze case.
yeah, well, even the shoegaze now, it's like, I don't even think mumbling's a part of it. It really is,
Mhm.
like, it needs melody or it needs, like, decently strong singing because you're still adding something sonically to it. Every male vocalist I work with, like, it's a pretty much my 2 main prerequisites are every male vocalist needs to take some amount of vocal lessons because there's just not much, in the world that's showing people males, like, how to sing, like, guys don't do choir, it's not the '60s, guys aren't singing in church, it's not the '60s, you know? It's like, guys who can kinda sing aren't playing in cover bands making more than their parents at 17 like Neil Young or the Beatles were doing, you know?
Yeah,
It's like so they don't have any, like, real ways to, like, glow up, and, like, you know, there's a
it's a great
reason.
point.
Yeah, and there's a reason why so many guys sing like Jeff Buckley, because he's one of the last guys to get any amount of commercial success or any sort of, like, both commercial and critical, like, whatever, like, commercial or critical praise, together and, have a really good singing voice. And then
It's
Tom
a
York
great point.
off, you know, and yeah, so thanks, man, and I think that's really important. I think guys don't hear enough good singers, but there's always, you know, 30 pretty good to amazing female singers at any given time, you know, and it's like right now, like Billie Eilish, man, it's like, yeah,
Amazing.
it doesn't matter about her range necessarily, but, like, what she does with her voice, she's fucking incredible. I don't care if
Yeah,
she's a nepo baby, I don't care if she's a legit what they call it, that's
industry plant.
industry plant, yes. I don't care if she was an industry plant, right?
It's
Um,
very stupid.
yeah, I mean, because ultimately, yeah, I mean, like, anyone who gets signed to a major now, it's like everyone's doing that sort of industry plant sort of,
I made a whole video. It's the dumbest.
yeah, no, and I
Okay,
think it's silly, but, like, it's like, yo, like, she wouldn't be making great record after great record if she wasn't capable of it. If there was and, like, there's videos of her singing at 5 years old, and I'm getting goosebumps about
no,
a freaking 5-year-old who's not my niece, not my family member,
no,
not my
no.
daughter, not my little sister, you know? It's like
So some people need to learn how to emote, and some people naturally have it. It's this same thing. Like I talked a lot about it in my book on creativity. Is that you see over and over in the creativity studies that there's an advantage to being talented, which is having innate abilities early on, but people can also learn to do that and come very far. Just as we were talking about with artists who sometimes have to grow into their greatness.
absolutely.
Since we're running low on time, I
Okay.
wanna get that loop on, the Meat Locker in Montclair.
Oh, okay. So, when my guys High released their album eventually, like so it didn't get covered by anything, no coverage in Pitchfork, which is fine because it's 2025.
There's a lot of big bands who complain about their lack of coverage in Pitchfork. I just saw Underscores do it, and she's massive.
Yeah, and quite frankly, it's like, yo, it doesn't even matter, right? It's like it's not making careers the way it did. Ryan Schreiber isn't
Yep.
there. The whole old crew who like were the gatekeepers that like gatekeep friends out of it, and you know, like it's all gone. It's like it's
Yeah, yeah.
Condé Nast. It's like being like okay, like '60s Rolling Stones, and then all stolen Rolling Stones mag, and then all of a sudden it's like early 1990s or 1995, and you're like, what's this crap? It's like yeah, decades have passed, and it's not relevant in the same way, you know? It's like what Rolling Stone had done in, like, earlier eras, well, Spin Magazine was doing that, and then eventually Elle Press was doing what Spin was doing, and,
Uh-huh.
but, my point is that, so Ian Cohen, who's, like, a really renowned Pitchfork writer, I think he's the father of what they call is it fourth wave emo? I'm not
Yeah, 3rd wave, 4th wave, emo, whatever we wanna call it, but Ian is definitely, like, funny enough, like, I managed and produced that band Sobo, so they're doing a reunion show
Oof.
next week, and, like, with one simple review, turned them into a career act.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
in
so
2012.
yeah.
Maybe 2013, I can't quite
Mhm.
remember.
Yeah, so he really, you know, when their debut record came out for Dive, my homies, he, like, totally lavished it with praise, and then because, you know, High's done a little bit of touring with Dive, and there's definitely Dive's an influence to a degree, you know, he kinda compares and contrasts, and, you know, Ian Cohen, he's, like, our age, you know, I think he's older than
Mhm.
me, and he's out there being, like, in his little write-up for his personal blog, he's like, you know, they don't have a clear narrative like the way Dive had, like, captured tracks in 285 Kent, and I'm like, High has Julia's War and The Meat Locker, and if that doesn't mean anything to you, it just means you're out of touch and this stuff's smaller because everything's smaller now, you know, and it's just like
Yeah, yeah.
I was really offended by that, and that's why I have to bring it
Well,
up now because I've re
I was gonna say, the band Future of the Left retorted Ian Cohen's bad review, and it is the single greatest takedown of a reviewer and reviewers type
Oof.
of brain about art that I've ever read in my life. Like, I reread it recently when a friend reminded me of it, and my jaw, like, hit the floor at how intelligent it was.
Wow. Yeah, and it was like, honestly, like, I didn't I mean, the fact that he wanted to give them any time was incredible because he's such an esteemed
Mhm,
writer, and even if I have, like, entirely different taste in music than him for them, other than I think dive, the fact that he wanted to give any inches on his own thing to High and give him, like, little bit of a praise,
mhm.
or the thing that comes before praise, but when he said that, like, "Oh, they don't have this clear narrative of Julia's Wo," and I'm just like, of, 285 and captured tracks, and I'm just like, "Wow, man, it's the world we're living in, Meat Locker and Julia's War is that." I'm sorry,
Yeah,
there's n
100%.
in capitalism that there once was, so that, like, even in the fading music biz, that something like captured tracks could still flourish, but so if you don't know our world, that's fine, but that's yeah, anyway, so
All right. I'm going to close off with what I think may be a new tradition on these
you
interviews I do. Matt, what is the one thing you really, really, really want musicians to stop doing?
ooh, wow, it's just one.
Mm. I figured this is like the easiest thing in the world for you, but then I forget that you see so much dumb shit. And I should say, like, there's many promoters who don't even go to their own shows. Like, you're at your own shows, so you see so much stupidity. It's probably hard.
I think overall, I think artists need to stop feeling entitled. I think it's a longer road to get to where you think you're going or that you wanna go, and there's only so many artists that can fit on a bill or fit on a tour or fit on a record label or work with this person X, Y, and Z, and it doesn't mean that you're totally less than. It just means that, like, either this just made the most sense in this matter or whatever it is, or some bands have certain things they're doing really well, but they need to do other things a little bit better, and that's what myself or other people are paying attention to, and I think but ultimately, I don't care about having to deal with your entitlement. I care about you. If I like what you do and I think you're doing something special, I'm gonna be able to maybe, like, compartmentalize and put it off to the side and be like, until this becomes an actual problem, it's not. But you're going to be doing to that to people who don't have your best interests in mind and people who don't know you on a personal level or didn't hear your first MP3 2 weeks before everyone else did because the guy got it sent personally to me or something. So I think that's really important. I think artists, because it's not just dealing with one aspect of your career; it's a lot of it. And I think I, fortunately or unfortunately, lived in an era where you could just quadruple in size in such a quick time that it was honestly unsustainable, and I think if you look to actual indie rock, for artists that had breakthrough moments and became like, household names within their genres for about a year or 3, you'll see so many artists that, like, had these songs that were everywhere, songs that were in friggin' Pacific Sunwear and Topshop and Abercrombie& and Fitch. I mean, they were just we're all getting played everywhere, and you'll see so many artists from, like, 2009 to 13 that, like, just came up really fast and absolutely disappeared, and I think that level of growing so super quick and just quadrupling in size, like, overnight, just I think some people it just, you don't have enough of, like, a personal infrastructure for it. You're dealing with all these business people who don't have your best interests in mind because there was more money to be made off of it, than there is now, so business things were coming in sooner, labels were coming in sooner, and, it's like Money Changes Everything by The Brains via Cyndi Lauper. Everybody's just looking out for themselves, and now I think every artist wants to succeed fast, and I think it's almost a blessing when it didn't happen, like, it happened so much later for me than I wanted it to. I took a lot of bands, but on my end, a lot of, I think, what came from behind the scenes and anything that came from me really helped our band go farther quicker because I was like, "We gotta practice 5 days a week. We gotta do this." Like, "Hey, if we have work and it doesn't matter what the show is, like, we're gonna take off of work and we're just gonna do it. We're gonna play the cool shows." And that was another big thing too. There was bands, oh my god, I had a nickname for it back in the day because 'cause I'm a little brat. Oh, there was these bands that would only play, like, Todd P shows, and they would only play the
Oh,
best,
yeah.
and they hadn't earned it yet, but also, like, they just weren't even whatever. Oh my god, what did I used to call them? Oh, man. But my point is that, like, And there's still versions of that now where I see bands that, like, there's certain dues they have to pay, and they wanna skip those dues, and I'm telling you,
Mm.
because I've seen it before it related to my life, when it did relate to my life, and then after the fact. Every band, pretty much 100 out of 100 of bands who think that they're gonna get further because they're gonna, like, skip these steps, and there's these shortcuts. 100 out of 100 just don't really end up going anywhere, because if you're looking for
Mhm.
shortcuts, you're not really looking to have a career. A career isn't a shortcut. Career is multiple albums, it's 7 years, it's 10 years, it's 20 years, and if you're just looking to get big fast and to get big quick and to make the most money as you can quickly, you're gonna be burning bridges to do it, you're gonna be stepping on people's heads, you're gonna be chasing trends, you're gonna be doing lackluster shit, and it's like, yeah, I mean, it's important to know about trends, and this is something what I was saying about, like, protecting bands. Like, I used to tell some bands like, I worked with, and it doesn't pertain to every band I've worked with, but I would say, like, I'm keeping an eye on the trends so you don't have to. You do
Mm.
what you do, and, like, if there's something important from a trend that relates to your sound, I might try to, suggest some ways to bring that in, or find ways that might make sense to immerse in your sound, to have a new thing to play with sonically or creatively, right? And then if the trend doesn't affect you or has nothing to do with what you're doing, like, stay the fuck away from it. It's like playing with fire, you know? And
Yeah. No, I heard the best advice about, like, trending audio on TikTok. It's like if you wouldn't do it even if it wasn't trending, you shouldn't do it.
yep, exactly. And I think artists, and like I said, like, I think artists maybe want too much too quick, and that's just not how any of this happens. And if it doesn't happen, and you to start getting some success, like, be thankful because you have more time to be prepared, and, like, I
Yeah.
think my band Friends falling apart the way we did, it was, like, I think our singer, a lot of weight was on her shoulders, creatively, professionally, being a front person, having these, like, kinda star qualities, having all sorts of things thrown at her, and for me, by that point, I've been playing shows since I was 12, I put out
Mhm.
multiple 7 inches while in high school and different
Yeah, that's
labels,
true.
and, it's like
Matt had the coolest straight edge hardcore band in all of North New Jersey when we were
wow.
kids.
Yeah, but if we did, it was only because there was, like, 4 of us, 4 straight edge hardcore band.
But the competition was very sloppy and bad.
Yeah, but we did a lot of cool shit, I mean, we played with, we played the Pipeline, that's part
Mhm.
of my introduction to the legend of Jesse Cannon, who was already legendary, I mean, even before I met you, I'd already heard of you because it was, like, you and Spencer and Sam and, there was already, like,
Causing a lot of trouble.
you guys were.
Still in therapy about it to this day.
And as you should be, because that was some iconic stuff. I had a lot of experience. I'd been through the thing. If anything, it was almost like some of it even happened later for me than I would wanted it to, because part of it, there was a little bit of exhaustion of going through these things, like switching genres, switching bands, switching cities. Like, it takes a lot out of you. And I don't even know if
Yeah.
artists always are aware of it. You're not aware of it until after it happens, and you're like, oh, I was kind of burnt out, or I needed to, like, reset my compass. And I think, and also a lot of artists, right? If you move to New York because you want to have a career and you want to go big or go home, and you come from another place and you did really well there, like, when it's taking a while for that to happen in New York, like, you can't take it personally. New York is its own crazy
Yeah.
beast, and if it's not brutal to you, and if you don't think New York has a brutality to it, you didn't do New York. It's like bodybuilders say, if it's leg day and you walk home, and, like, you can walk, you didn't do leg day. Like, if
Yep.
New York is only, like, if you only think that it's, like, fun and roses, and you're a musician, artist, or creative person, that's not New York City. You're not having a real New York City experience. Whatever you're doing, you're coming in, like, and there would be an artist who's already, like, famous, It's like there was so many artists moved here, like, people all of a sudden calling the Rapture, like, New York City artists. I'm like, I remember them on Gravity. I remember them
Oh,
on
yeah.
Pop
That
living.
that that they yeah, we played with them on a tour when they came from the West Coast, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and, like, it's like, well, like, Rapture, Chick, 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 Bright Eyes. I mean, they would literally move here, and before their mail was even coming here, the fucking PR had gotten it out throughout all the press that it's like, "Oh, like, you're a New York City artist. And I'm like, I'm sorry, if you didn't start from, you don't start from zero, but like if you didn't put out like your first album, get your first like record deal or whatever constitutes that as a record deal now, like I don't want to consider you a New York artist because you had to like earn your stripes here. And it could be a really brutal place. You know, and that's fine. There's so many opportunities to be had here. It can be really competitive. And if you can't navigate that or stay zen or stay sane or stay like healthy in this mix, like one, you're not alone, but two, then like maybe this just isn't the place you need to be, because
100%.
it's hard out here everywhere, but you're like people say New York, if you make it here, you can make it anywhere. In music, that's
Yeah.
not true because our ecosystem is so different here that you can do this thing that can like sell out Babies Are Right and get you a bunch of New York style critical acclaim, like, and like not to, name artists or something 'cause I don't even know what the vision is or what the details are, but like I just can't imagine someone like even the Dare being as big anywhere in the country outside of LA as they are in New York.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point.
I think it will be decades before he's that big somewhere else. Okay, go. You gotta go.
Matt, tell everybody where they can find you.
Oh, geez. Oh, no, well, you can find me on
Ju-
Instagram,
just-
right? Is that what you're looking for?
yeah, 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 yeah. Well, I mean, you could also say I don't want to be found.
Oh,
If you
that's
don't
true.
want to be found.
I don't wanna be found. Yeah, no, I don't, yeah. I mean, look, you can find my last band's record on Spotify. We were called Kissing Is a Crime. We're the only artist with that name. And in like a post-Google world, that was important for me because I had been
Yeah.
in a band called Friends who
Oh,
were, like, impossible to Google. So you
oh,
the country song we're named after by the Carter family, that will come up, but Kissing Is a Crime, Spotify, we were on Don Giovanni, I'm still proud of that music, and you can look up
nice.
Friends, I'm His Girl was our big breakthrough song. We made our biggest impact well before Spotify, in, like, 2011, 2012. Before that was even, like, like,
Yeah.
if it was around, like, no one I knew had it. I mean, I feel like
No, 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 no. It was before Spotify
well, I mean,
was
like,
invented.
24 was, like, 2014 the first year that people really started kinda going there, 2015, I didn't buy it forever because I spent all my
I
money in
I
Vines.
I had a journalist account for, 2 years before everybody, but, what do you call it? No, it was RDO. I was on before that.
Yeah, I just was like, I buy so much vinyl, and I'm like, if I spend this $10, whatever it was a month then, I think it's probably already 10 then, it was like, that back then, there was still records being sold for, like, 12 and 14, $16, so it means, like, oh, I might not be able to buy the new Vampire Weekend record or the new Woods record or the new Ariel Pink record, but back when you could still buy his records before he was you learned.
I was gonna say.
I just wanted to make
Very, 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 very canceled.
very,
Matt,
very
thank you so much for, joining us, and,
thank you.
yeah,